Hey everyone, welcome to Founders 365 with me, Steven Haggerty. Today I'm joined by Dene Stuart, founder of the Exceptional Leader Academy. How are you today, Dene?
I'm extremely well, thank you, Stephen. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Thank you for coming on. Like we were just talking about before, I'm super intrigued just to unpack the word leadership at a time like this.
Yeah,
But before we go into that, just give us an overview of what you do, what the Exceptional Leadership Academy does, and then we can go from there.
Cool. Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me on today. Really looking forward to having this conversation with you.
All the while.
And so I'm essentially, although I hate this word, I'm a leadership coach. I've tried everything in my power to not use that word coach, and tried all sorts of different words. And as in various meetings with people, I go through these descriptions of what I do, and they say, "Oh, you're a coach." So eventually I've given in. So yeah, I'm in that leadership coaching mentoring space.
Yeah.
A little bit about my background. I've got 20 years corporate experience, pretty high level, director in a couple of companies, running big teams, big budgets, like £100 million budgets, teams of like 150, 160 people, distributed over the country, in various locations. So that's part of it. And then the other side of it, through that sort of time as well, I've also run my own businesses. I've been an employer. I know what it's like when you're paying out the salary checks and there's not enough money at the end of the week to pay yourself. So, pretty much I've got it from all sides of what it is to be a leader in business.
Yeah.
So I started the academy. Well, my journey to start the academy started around about 2012 in April, so you're getting on for about 8 years ago almost, to the day. When I was made redundant from my last corporate job, which was as a commercial director in the regional newspapers. Again, managing a big team across a diverse route. And I decided I needed to do something else and wanted to do something else. So jumped into this space of, I felt coaching, although I didn't know that's what it was called at that time, would be the thing for me. And so I jumped in, and my route really through to coming to the Exceptional Leader Academy, and I only coined that name last year.
Okay.
It's been a bit of a zigzag journey. So your founders,
best stories are.
Yeah, about getting to the point of being able to do the Ron Seal thing, and be able to explain to people, well, what is it you do, and get it into that Ron Seal so it does what it says on the tin. So I had all sorts of names before, and the Exceptional Leader Academy came out eventually as a means of just saying simply what it is I do. I help people to become exceptional leaders. And I think the thing that I guess makes me different is I believe everybody has the potential to become an exceptional leader without exception. And the whole thing that I do is help people to, use your word, unpack what's getting in the way of them becoming an exceptional leader. The truth is, a lot of people don't like that. They become very comfortable with who they are, what they are, how they show up. And when you start to work with them and reveal some of the things that are holding back their progress as a leader, it's quite uncomfortable.
For sure. You've been in this leadership space for 8 years, like we said. It must have changed a lot over that time, just because businesses and the way people interact has changed. Have you seen your training and your consulting have to adapt to manage that change?
Well, I think the changes are physical in terms of the structure of businesses. So the fact that we're doing this, I've actually been doing this type of meeting for quite a long time. So, 5 years ago, it was enabling me to have meetings with clients in Canada and Romania, in the rest of Europe, even in India. So, I've been sort of doing this for quite a while. But in terms of what it is to be a leader, for me, no, there isn't any major change, because for me, being a leader is about understanding human psychology.
Yeah, agreed.
It's as simple as that. And that hasn't changed.
So let's put this in the perspective of what you said, that anyone could become an exceptional leader.
Yeah.
How do you first see that in someone, and then secondly, how do you take someone through that process to get them maybe from that, I don't know, person that doesn't believe in themselves to be that leader, to stepping up? And I imagine the day that they step into that office or that environment as that leader is such an amazing day for both you and them, because they're sort of walking that talk. But talk me through that process that you often see.
Okay. So first, well, let me start off by defining what I mean by exceptional leader.
Sure.
Because I think that's the sort of foundation point of this. And for me, being an exceptional leader is about this. It's about getting the results you really want.
Yeah.
And the emphasis is on the word really, because most people, and this is what gets in most people's way, is they don't really think through what they really want.
Yeah.
They have a vague idea of what they want, and they sort of go out to achieve that. And in trying to achieve something that's vague, they have no sense of whether they're really achieving the things that they want. So for me, to be an exceptional leader is about getting the results you really want in the two aspects of life, personal and professional.
Amazing. And when you work with people, who is it typically that you're working with?
I'm working with either people who own their own businesses, probably a minimum of sort of 5-6 employees up to about 100 employees. And I'm also working with fairly senior managers who have sort of reached a point and something's blocking them. They're not quite sure. And they've usually decided that they've got to invest in themselves, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about current situation, because I think leadership is a word that's sort of being thrown around at the moment in terms of how people perceive a leader should act in companies that are either having to make huge decisions and likewise managers to their team and all these different areas, all these different level of leadership.
Yeah.
Let's just unpack what is really going on and why you think there's is fear the right word? I'm not sure. But why you think there's this feeling of a lack of leadership in times like this within certain businesses?
Well, I'd say there's probably businesses where the people in that business feel they've had great leadership, and there'll be businesses and organizations and countries that feel they haven't had the right leadership. So, there's going to be a spectrum. But if we sort of come back to the core point of the word fear, we're at a time of huge uncertainty and huge stress. And under those situations, the human mind, the psychology, the psyche has been designed, it's evolved to go into one of three states: fight, flight, or freeze. Because that's what kept us safe. We go back, it's a bit of a cliched way of talking about it, but I'm sure you'll have come across this in other conversations.
Yeah.
But it's that old caveman thing. If you've got a saber-toothed tiger at the entrance of your cave, you got to do something about it, and we're in that situation right now. The virus is doing that. And so that's where most people are. They're in one of those three states.
Yeah.
And if you're in that state, it makes it very difficult for you to then recognize what's going on with other people, because you're working at what I call the base level of survival. When you're working at the base level of survival, the only thing that matters is what's going on for you in your world.
Yeah.
And so it's a very sort of basic way of working. And this can happen to really senior leaders. So, even leaders of big organizations, if they are essentially still trading their time for money, they haven't sort of gone to that place where they are investors, where their money is releasing them from that bind, if you like, then potentially what the biggest fear for them is not the virus. The biggest fear for them is what's going to happen to their careers, because if they've got these big salaries, they're probably leading leveraged lives, big mortgages, kids at private school, all that sort of stuff. And if they're in a place of fear because their organization might not survive, or maybe They've got investors who are thinking, well, hang on, this guy's not cutting it, or this, this woman's not cutting it. We need to get a new leader in place. Where's their head going to be? It's going to be in that place of fear, fright, flight, or freeze. So having a real depth of understanding about that is really crucial, and having the self-awareness of where you are on that spectrum, and having the intrapersonal skills, those inner skills, to be able to sort of get out of that so that you can then be useful to the people that you're leading.
Yeah. Why do you think that some leaders go down the self-development route to make themselves better leaders, and other leaders just coast along, maybe is the right word to say that? Because there's a huge difference. And I mean, I can definitely tell, and I'm sure you can as well, when you're speaking to someone that has invested in themselves in whatever way that is versus someone that has sort of just coasted along. But what's the difference in mindset between the two?
So in my experience, there's two things. So you can have people who have had, you might call it a blessed path. And so they've progressed, whether it's in a career or whether it's in their business. And perhaps their level of challenge hasn't been significant enough to bring them to what I call the dark night of the soul. That place where it's like, you have to look, it can't get any worse. You've only got one way to go, it's up, but you've still got to make that decision to go up. And for most people, it takes something like that, an experience like that in life, to get them to the point where they think, I've got to do something about this for myself. Certainly I've been through that.
So does that mean that this situation we're currently in now could breed exceptional leaders?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because they're being forced to go down this totally unpredicted, and 3 months ago, not even on anyone's radar situation, and putting people's back against that wall. So do you think there's going to be a lot of leaders that are going to come out of this in a much better place?
So you're going to get leaders who come out in a better place, who will have had that sort of insight about themselves and being able to grasp and confront the challenge. And you're going to get people where this situation has broken them. You're going to get both.
Do you think that's okay, though? Do you think it's okay for a leader to realize they're not a leader? Because not everyone has to lead. I've said leader so many times in that sentence.
That's right. So part of leadership is recognizing where your strengths and weaknesses are. It's the key foundation point is actually self-awareness.
Yeah.
So you can be the nominal leader, i.e. you can have the title and all of that, but if you're not the best person to lead in a given situation, you can still hold that title, but give more authority or delegate authority to someone who is better placed. And if you have the mental agility to see that and do that, then you come out the other side a stronger person. Because if you think of any organization of size, I mean, let's use the Richard Branson example, right?
Always a great example.
It is a great example. I mean, I totally admire the guy. I mean, what's the size of his organization now across the world? Is it 300,000 employees across the world, something like that?
Started from a basement magazine.
Yeah. How do you lead 300,000 people? You can't do it by having minute control over each, even the managing directors, CEOs of your various businesses. You can't, you've got to have that ability to delegate. But does anyone challenge the fact that he's still the leader of Virgin? No. So it's about grasping that principle that actually effective, truly effective leadership is about delegating to who you need to delegate to at the time you need to delegate to them.
Exactly. And you brought up the main point for me, and that is the awareness of the positives and weaknesses, the strengths and weaknesses. Sorry. If there's a leader, let's try and get a real world example here. But if there was a leader, especially in this time, that perhaps isn't being able to see their weaknesses, but others are, what do people do in that situation? Do you approach that leader and say, look, maybe there's a better way to do that? Because a lot of the time, that the famous word ego may get in the way and stop the leader being able to truly lead to the best of their ability by delegating.
Got it. Got it. Look, let's not mince around. I mean, that is a really difficult situation. I've been in it myself. If you're working for someone and, and they've got that approach to leadership, it's like being in a slow motion car crash. You can see it coming, and, you can be sitting and screaming in the front seat, trying to get them to do something different. So it is a difficult situation. But to me, this is where leadership is not about your title.
Mm-hmm.
For me, this is about saying it doesn't matter what you do, where you are, that if you've got relationships with people, i.e., you're not a hermit living in a cave in the Outer Hebrides. If you've got relationships with people, you are a leader, because what you do, what you say, how you act, how you behave will affect and influence the other people. So if you can grasp that and you can develop your personal skills, your interpersonal skills, and you've got the courage to then try and approach a leader who's not been effective, who's above you in the hierarchy, obviously you've got to have that opportunity. So you've got to be mixing in the sort of circles and in that sort of environment where you're going to be with them. Then as a leader, it's beholden upon you to sort of do something about that. But it does take courage. And the two words that I use around leadership is this: it's going to take courage, and it's going to make you feel vulnerable.
Definitely.
And there's no two ways out of that. If you haven't engaged your courage to take you out of your comfort zone, and if you're not feeling vulnerable by that, then really you're not pushing yourself, and you're not in that leadership role.
And this sort of brings me on to a great question, in the sense, if we flip that and you've got someone that wants to be an exceptional leader, how do they get to those stages of realization that they are an exceptional leader?
Well, I don't think you ever get there totally, because
dynamic. Nice.
The whole point about it is, as you grow as a person, and I'm sure you've experienced this yourself, Steven, and people in your founders group will know this. As you grow, your sense of what you can do and achieve grows with that. So every time you feel you've reached where you wanted to be, there's another horizon out there. And you feel like you can do more. So it's one of those tantalizing goals that you can never really get to. If you think you've got there, then you're probably not.
Which I love that, though. I love the fact that as we evolve and as we grow and as we become better people, we're naturally, because of that, creating better goals for ourselves, better visions, pushing our boundaries naturally. And I think we get into this cycle of growth as well. And the hardest part of that cycle is, like you said, that beginning bit where you're going to get uncomfortable. You're going to, stretch those comfort zones. And the first step is to just try it, I guess, is to just go for it and do something that is going to help you realize and increase this awareness of leadership, or self-leadership, I guess.
Yeah, well, there's it's sort of in the Simon Sinek space about the why, the what, the how, which, is obviously well worn, and, most people have seen that stuff. But, in my experience, what holds most people back is when they get stuck on the how. And so they know what they want to do, but then because they don't know how to do it, they hold back.
Yeah, definitely.
And they think, well, okay, I'll just go on this training and then I'll know how to do it. And then I'll sort of just do this and then I'll know how. But until you actually
want to purchase the answer, they want to purchase that how.
Yeah. But until you actually jump in and get to grips with it, and it doesn't matter what you do, you never do, because it doesn't matter how much you do outside of the arena of whatever it is you're trying. It's only when you get in that arena that you really learn what the ins and outs are. So it's the old adage of, you jump and build your wings on the way down,
Yeah, definitely. So what can people be doing then in a time like this to be better leaders, to help one another? Because it's spoken about a lot on the podcast yesterday, but there is a real sense of community being driven here. I think both in businesses and outside business and just personal life. So and I think we're seeing leaders arise up from communities, which is fantastic. But how else can we, as a community, as businesses, be putting ourselves in better positions to lead and, you know, get through this, if I can put it so bluntly?
Sure. Well, if I take it back to my definition of exceptional leadership,
Yeah.
which is about getting the results you really want, that's about being able to work with people and do it on a sustainable basis, so that, you know, when you've done whatever you're doing with them, they still want to work with you.
Yeah.
And there's quite a lot of people, and, you know, there's quite a lot of people who run businesses, and, you know, they still see people as numbers, as like on a spreadsheet or on a profit and loss or something like that. They don't really see them as people. They see them as usable assets or usable consumables.
Yeah.
And for me, it's about getting to the grips of, how do I achieve what I want? How do I get the results I want? And within the relationships that are going to be sustainable and grow. And for me, the key thing, what I would recommend to anyone is learning about personality profiling.
Yeah.
And for me, there's three main tools around that. I'm
You're
accredited.
You're a DISC, aren't you?
I'm DISC.
Is
Yeah, I
it DISC
use that.
practitioner?
Sorry?
Do you call it a DISC practitioner?
Yes, there's all sorts of words.
Yeah, all sorts of words.
Yeah, so
your thing is DISC.
So DISC, there's a thing called Insights, which is all around colors,
Yeah,
which a lot of people have done. And the other big one, of course, is Myers-Briggs, which is the Carl. Well, they're both Insights and Myers-Briggs are both Carl Jung based. But the thing about that, those personality profiling methodologies, is as part of that, you get insight into how people show up when they're under stress. So you have your normal expression of behavior. And then you get a description of, if this person's under stress, then this is how they're likely to show up. And once you've got that insight, it gives you a window into why people do the things they do. And when you've got that insight and you've got that flexibility within yourself, you can come out of your own sort of, what can I call it, sort of usual way of behavior.
Yeah, your own patterns,
and become adaptive, so that you can get the best out of out of the people that you work with.
Yeah.
And I think it was Peter Drucker who said, you know, the job of a leader is to make other leaders. You know, and so for me, that's one of the ways in which you do that. If you can really get under the skin of what makes somebody else tick, it gives you a much better insight into how to then get the best out of that person.
Yeah, and plus, I suggest this to a lot to my clients. It's almost you almost want to have a blueprint of an employee, so then you can build the better teams, you can build a better meeting. You know, some people hate going to meetings, and the way people learn and the way people interact, you can really start molding these environments that are going to, one, do the best for your business, but secondly, do the best for everyone in that business, because they're going to enjoy it more. They're going to get better conversations. They're going to connect more with people.
Yeah.
I do think that the insights and the personality analysis is not underrated, but I think it is sort of overlooked a lot of time, because people do think it's this big complicated system, and actually the whole point of it is you're breaking it down into super simple terminology. Correct. To help you as a leader be a better leader, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's just poorly marketed probably 10 years ago or something. All right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of companies use them. I think, you know, big organizations use it. I think one of the challenges is it can be quite expensive if you've got a lot of people. So, but, you know, there's lots of different versions of it out there. But,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's so many places online that you can, even if you know, you might not get all of it, but you get a snippet, and you can start using those snippets to really help and change the way you are a leader, and, like I said, your business in itself, which is great. Dean, listen, if you could give 3 tips to someone that is maybe struggling with leadership, let's go with that one. 3 tips to someone that is struggling to feel like a leader in current times, and I know there are people out there that are having those struggles. What would the 3 tips be to allow them to step back into that leadership role and, you know, be a better leader, I guess?
Okay, you know, I'd love to say that there's a silver bullet that I could give you around this. There's three sort of little tips and tricks I can offer, but they're not going to be magic bullets that are going to work like that. The first is, I would say, you've got to take ownership, you've got to take responsibility, and you've got to ask yourself this question: what am I doing to create this situation that I'm currently experiencing? So if you are currently unhappy with the way in which your team is working, whether that's as a business owner or as a leader in a corporate, you've got to have that ability to say, well, what is it that I'm doing that's causing this? And that's a really big step for a lot of people to take, because one, it comes back to those two key words. You know, it takes courage and it's going to make you feel vulnerable. But until you can do that, you will always end up behaving in the same way and creating the same results. So one of the phrases I use is that most leaders, they end up managing the unintended consequences of their unintentional behavior.
That's a great saying. Love that.
So that's for me, that's the absolute foundation. You know?
Yeah.
So the second thing is just become much better at understanding other people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we've just been talking about in terms of what the personality profiling does, you know, and helps you to do. And you can read a book. I mean, sometimes you don't need to do much more than read a book or watch a webinar like this, or, you know, there's so much resources out there, you know.
Yeah.
I can't remember
resources.
Yeah, I can't remember where I heard that, but it's relatively recently where someone said, you know, ignorant today, you go back a few years and, you know, it was tough to get education. I mean, you're not talking that long, you know, 100 years. But today, ignorance is a choice, you know.
Very true.
And that's a big thing for people to get over. You know, whatever you don't understand in whatever aspect of work you've got, there's a resource out there that you can get for free nowadays. You know, there's no excuses. So that's the second thing: get to understand people. And the third thing I would say, it's a 3-letter word, and it's about that fear, that anxiety when you're not sure what to do, and maybe you might have those doubts. You know, that inner voice where, oh, I don't know how to do this, I can't do it, and all you do is you add a 3-letter word to the end of that sentence: yet. And it has a magical effect on the mind.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that yet. I can't do that yet. It just starts to open the mind up to be able to take in some of the things you need to learn.
Massively. It forces your mind to know that there's an option.
Yeah.
It's I'm a big fan of the word yet. And it is just one of those words, like you said, that can unpack so much potential. And it's just such a simple way, such a simple pattern for someone to get into. And that's such a great bit of advice. Just put yet on the end. Dean, listen, thank you so much for those three wisdoms, golden nuggets. But I also love the fact you pre-framed them and said, look, this isn't a magic bullet. Because I think there's a lot of people out there that, like we said earlier, actually, you know, read a book or go to a course and then think, oh, you know, I know everything, or I now know how to do this. But it takes practice. It takes implementation. And, you know, that's one of my favorite words in the whole wide world. It's the word implementation. You can't do anything without it. Other people may say action, but, you know, I like to be different. But Dean, thank you so much for coming on. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, speak to you about leadership, speak to you about the Exceptional Leadership Academy, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, I'm easily findable on LinkedIn. So as we were saying earlier, there's no one else called Dene Stuart on LinkedIn, spelt my way. So that's probably the easiest. Otherwise, you can get me at dean@exceptionalleaderacademy.com.
Fantastic. Nice and simple. I love it. Dean, thank you so much for coming on Founders 365.
Thank you for having me. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thoroughly enjoyed it myself. And for anyone watching and listening, please subscribe and do all the good stuff. And make sure you check out Dean. Thanks, everyone, for watching Founders 365.
Cheers.